Everything is expensive. I would say your cars, housing.
Toyota Prius is about like $100,000.
Hey bosses, it's Elena from Asian Boss. Did you know that Singapore currently shares the title of the world's most expensive city with New York? In fact, it consistently ranks as one of the world's most expensive places to live, with the highest car prices and being one of the most costly places to shop for clothes. But what is life like in such an expensive city, and how are Singaporeans coping with the rising global inflation rates? We hit the streets of Singapore to find out. So today we're curious to find out how much it costs to live in Singapore. So what do you do for a living, if you don't mind?
I'm a student. Oh, I'm a media executive.
And how much do you earn roughly per month, if you don't mind, in SGD?
About $3,000.
2.8k to 3k Singapore dollar. Private hire driver and freelancer.
I'm a brand manager of a restaurant.
How much roughly do you make in Singapore dollars per month?
Below 4,000.
And would you say that what you make is considered average in Singapore?
I would say just enough to survive.
About 5 to 6,000. I'm a business executive in one of the food company in Singapore.
I'm a HR, probably like above 5k. Yeah.
So do you think that is average of what Singaporeans usually make?
I think probably slightly above average, slightly above, yeah.
Most of the time, I'll just sell shoes. Really, I haven't really gotten into shoes till I was 15, and I realized that you can make a living out of selling shoes. I also sell guitars as well, because guitars are most of them are quite expensive. I would say not a lot. It was probably around 6,000. Depends really, because my friends and all, they make quite a lot of money, but I do feel a bit downgraded sometimes, but it's okay, because really 5,000 is all you need as a Singaporean. Yeah.
Okay, so if you make 6,000, would you say that that's average or above or below average?
I'm pretty sure it's average, because most of Singaporeans living in Singapore, they earn about 5,000, and if you want to start a family and stuff, I think you might need 10 grand if I'm not wrong.
I'm a software engineer at a Chinese tech company. If we take this latest statistics of median salary in Singapore, so I'm around 20%, 30% above that number. I mean, unfortunately, I can't disclose my real numbers due to the NDA.
So Singapore is actually known as the country with the highest salary in Asia. So for the people outside of Singapore, it may seem like everybody is doing very well in Singapore and they don't really struggle financially. Do you think this is true, or do people still struggle to get by in Singapore?
It's a struggle to get by in Singapore. It isn't true. It isn't as what it seems lah.
I think it's true that they have these stereotypes. For example, I have international friends that think that Singapore is rich, but personally, it's not true, because there are a lot of Singaporeans that are basically struggling in terms of finance.
People are still struggling because the work done is so much that they need to do in order to get that amount of money or amount of expensive that they need to do.
People think of Singapore as a safe and stable country, and I think that's fair, but that still does not discount a lot of the challenges that many people face. I think people kind of feel the pressures of inflation nowadays lah. So if your friends ask you to eat out, you'll be like, don't wanna.
Even though the average is quite high, but the disparity between the highest and the lowest is still quite disproportionate. So I would say the inequality or the income inequality is still quite significant. The cost of living is obviously going up, and as a result, I think those people who are on the lower end of the income bracket, they will find it naturally more difficult to get by day to day.
So Singapore is also consistently ranked as one of the most expensive cities in the world. Can you give us some examples of what is considered expensive compared to maybe some other Asian cities? Everything is expensive. I would say your cars, housing, food. I think food is also rising in comparison. I would say in comparison to the Southeast Asia markets around us.
For example, my parents, they will laugh at me when I tell them I have $8 lattes, for example, which I just did, by the way. I just came from a cafe and I had an $8 latte.
Transport. If we were to hail a cab in Singapore in the late mornings of 3 a.m. like that, the transport fee for that would shoot up to 100 Sing dollars, because at that timing Like for example, Friday nights, if we were to go out drinking to a very late timing to 3 a.m. around Orchard area for say, it will cost you roughly 40 to 100 Singapore dollars to even grab a cab urgently to go back.
Alcohol, for example, it's heavily taxed here, so buying alcohol in supermarkets is expensive, but even more expensive just drinking out. In comparison, like bottle of wine, like that would cost like in Spain like around 10 euro, would cost here like around 30 Singapore dollars, like twice almost expensive, right? Getting that wine like in a bar and restaurant would get you like around $50, $60, yeah. Depending on the like how posh that place is, right? Like some can be like obscurely priced as like $100 or even more.
How about how much it costs to rent a house?
To rent a house, I think it could easily be 3 to 4 per month. Yeah. I think I've heard of some areas where like even a one-room flat is, or even just one room can cost up to 1,000 or 2,000. So I mean that's quite high.
For me right now, my rent is like 1.8k. If example you just compare with our neighbor country, the small flat here can buy a bigger flat there.
So you mentioned that your rent is about 1.8k. So how big is your house?
My house is only like 2 meter times 2 meter. That's it. 2 times 2? Yeah. 3 times 2 maximum, I think. That's my house right now. It's a room, actually. Actually, you have no choice because you have no house, so where are you gonna live, right?
If you're looking at a really central area, I think it can go up to 5-6k just to rent one bedroom condo in Singapore itself.
Yeah, so for yourself personally, do you rent or do you buy?
I'm currently staying still with my parents, like most Singaporeans do. Yeah, so technically most of the costs are still bared by my parents lah. So I'm fortunate in that way lah.
I heard the couple next door was like paying like $4,000 for the entire unit. That's like crazy expensive. So, and I mean even single rooms now you book, you try to rent, it's like 1,000 plus. So that's like, for someone who's maybe having $2,000-$3,000, your rental is going to cost like $1,000. That's like crazy. Like 30% just goes to rental. It's crazy.
If I would go for like a HDB, probably like a 2-room flat, I think that's enough for me. Maybe it costs like around 2,000 a month, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
So how much would it cost to buy that house?
Buy the house, probably $1 million, really, because most Singaporean houses are like $1 million or so. Because yeah, they're quite expensive.
My friends were telling me that after COVID, the rent increased by a lot, and they are easily expecting maybe like 40% of their monthly income to be going towards rent.
So would you say that is affordable for an average Singaporean?
No, not at all. That's why people, I think, choose to live with their parents.
So apart from a house, usually people also expect to buy a car, right? So buying a car in Singapore is really expensive. So can you explain how much roughly it costs and why is it so expensive?
Ooh, buying a car involves many things. I think you have to buy the physical car, which is for a new car, I think like what, $100,000. You have to get a COE, Certificate of Entitlement, which is it's basically like a document that you get to drive a car in Singapore. And then that's excluding like road tax, insurance, petrol, maintenance, yeah, all those things. I know one friend who got a car and then regretted it. So she sold it in the end.
Can you get a luxury car with $100,000?
Definitely not. I believe the luxury car probably costs about 500,000. For 100,000 Singapore dollars, you can also get second-hand cars, like vintage cars.
I know, like I think a Prius, right? Toyota Prius is about like $100,000. The certificate of entitlement, I think that's about 100,000 on top of the car, right? So I think it's about 200,000 total to own that car.
I think it's expensive as well because, like I said, Singapore land is small, so they also try to limit the number of cars that actually can run around Singapore lah. I mean, it's good for the traffic. Probably the government wanted to limit the number of cars that really can run around Singapore. I mean, it helps in terms of the carbon emission and all. I think they are encouraging like Singaporeans to really take the public transport lah, to really reduce the carbon emission in Singapore.
In the whole world, we have a lot of high inflation now because of all the global events that happen. How are you personally affected by the current economic condition, like high inflation?
Like last time I will eat out outside, but now I will cut down to eat out outside. I will cook at home.
I think things generally have gotten more expensive, right? Like, I mean, personally, I'm a bubble tea fan, right? In the past, bubble tea was, I remember it to be around $3 plus, but now it's easily $4.50, right? So that's one example that I see in my everyday life.
Oh, McFlurry. It was $2 at first. I remember in primary school it was like $2, and now it's like 3 something, which is crazy. Yeah. I don't know. I think food definitely was something that most of us feel the inflationary pressures from. Yeah.
So have you had to change your lifestyle or make any cutbacks in order to keep affording your standard of living?
Personally, I do like a lot of jobs. So like I do like on-campus jobs, which means like I work in uni, like as like a receptionist and things like that on campus. And then like F&B or on the weekends or like giving tuition, that kind. Yeah. I think I definitely felt the pressure to like work a lot more.
Do you have to cut back on any of your spending?
Oh yeah, most definitely. You have to cut back on like nights out, definitely. Nights out is very expensive in Singapore. It's just like how much I can spend in a night, you know, like with everything. So I wouldn't say I spend a lot now on nights out.
How much less?
$100, I would say, less. Just because like I don't find it worth to spend that much, like if it's already that high, you know. You don't really get much out of it either.
Do you personally struggle to get by with your current salary living in Singapore?
No, not really, no.
Yes. Because my income is not fixed. So I need to go and work harder to earn more.
How do you feel regarding the high costs?
I feel like very stressful. Need to work more job. So somehow it's very tiring.
Definitely, yeah. Especially when I don't really, I mean, I don't only make money for myself, for my children as well, for my aged parents as well. Just in case there's something that's going on, then, you know, I have a sum of money for rainy days.
How much do you think you need to make to live comfortably in Singapore without any worries?
I think like at least 7,500.
I would say if that kind that I would probably want to like go out, I can eat whatever I want, spend however I want, probably 20 to 30k a month would be good with every year if you're like rising costs, especially if I want to get a car or if I want to get a house, probably 20 to 30k, yeah, would be a good range.
If you're in Singapore, if you have a family, probably you need more than like 5k to live here, of course. And if, example, you're just alone like me, I think probably you just need like to live is like around $3,000 is too very much already for you. There's people who have $1,000 and they survive. So we never know. It depends on yourself. So on how you manage that money.
I don't think you can survive $1,000 in Singapore because from what I heard, 1,000 is you can't really pay your expenses and your like rent. Yeah, so you really need like at least 5,000. And if you have a family or so, like one of y'all should have like probably $5,000 each. So like both made up to probably like 10,000. Yeah.
This is too broad to say like what's comfortable because more we earn, more we want to like more we spend usually, you know. So if you start earning like 15,000, you start spending more because you start to go to more nicer places. You start buying nicer goods, right? Then suddenly your salary increases to 30k, 50k. You're getting more and more and more. It's like you becoming more hungrier. Well, I mean that's the driving force of capitalism in the end. If you're like having a family, then you have to send your kids to like kindergarten. They have to pay for those ones, for nannies, for like insurances, childcare, etc., etc. I mean, I know people like that are making like 15,000 a month, but they're having like 2 kids, it's still not enough.
Why do you think it's so expensive here compared to other Asian countries?
I guess it might have to do with the fact that our currency is a lot stronger. So I mean, Singaporeans' purchasing power is widely perceived as stronger. So naturally, I think things here ought to be, or they seem a little bit more expensive because Singaporeans sort of can afford it in that sense.
I think one reason is like our land is so scarce, right? So definitely property will be a hot cake, and with the demand for property, then it will come with like the rising cost. Definitely the supply won't be enough for the demand, and then that will push the prices up. Then I think post-COVID, post-pandemic, there could be a lot more influx of people coming in. By people I mean like those with money. so like investment coming in, people with money coming in, and then they want to have a piece of Singapore. So that will actually drive the demand up. I think another reason is also because like Singapore is a very effective place. So a lot of businesses actually also would like to set up their business here.
Doing business in Singapore, it's easy, like starting a business, doing business, low corporate taxes. That's why quite many corporations having here. There are tax breaks for some of the companies that are establishing some of the industries. For example, like just recently Hyundai opened one of its factories for like its new Ioniq 5 car, right, that is getting assembled here in Singapore. I mean, you might think like, why would they open here? Because like land is so expensive, but the Hyundai is getting like tax breaks due to that. That's the reason of like you have quite huge diversity of like big corporations here that are driving the economy in Singapore.
Are you worried about high prices increasing even more in the future? And have you ever considered moving somewhere cheaper to live?
Yes, of course. I think that's what most Singaporeans really think, whether really we can survive this very high cost of rising, whether the inflation really would catch up with your salary and all. I would say I obviously do consider like really moving overseas. Probably in the next when I retire, probably in the next like 20 years, we will retire somewhere that is really less stressful, less busy, less rising costs. Yeah, I think most Singaporeans probably look at either like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or sometimes like people want to probably also settle down in Thailand or Bali.
Yes, I do feel a little worried because I'm worried that by the time I'm old enough to settle down or buy my own house, it will be much more than what it's costing now. And I think that worries me because I might not be able to afford a house.
I can say for my friends also, if you ask them if they want to move out or not, I think definitely a lot of people want to move out of Singapore, between my friends and I. Whether or not we can, that's something else. Like we want to like go out of Singapore to work and then rent overseas. It just makes financially speaking, I think it makes more sense.
Not worried about Singapore to become the state of too expensive to live in, because Singapore has a very good record in economy-wise that yes, it's expensive, but it's still manageable. So I would say the Singapore government has been taking care very well for the past 20-30 years.
Anything else that you want to share with our overseas viewers or people that are not from Asia about the high living expenses in Singapore?
The grass is not always greener on the other side. But if you could make it in your own country, you don't have to leave your family for that. That would be very great and should be more appreciated for what you have.